Hi, my name is Maria Sweetlucky, and this time we're going to talk about water pollution. Thousands have lived without love, not one without water. Yet, we all know water is crucial for life. We trash it anyway. Some 80% of world's wastewater is dumped largely untreated back into our environment, polluting rivers, lakes, and oceans. This widespread problem of water pollution is jeopardizing our health, and safe water kills more people each year than war and all other forms of violence combined. Meanwhile, our drinkable water sources are finite. Less than 1% of the Earth's fresh water is actually accessible to us. Without action, the challenges will only increase by 2050 when the global demand for fresh water is expected to be one-third greater than it is now. What is water pollution? Water pollution occurs when harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, contaminate the stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other body of water, degrading water quality and rendering it toxic to humans or to the environment. What are the causes of water pollution? Water is uniquely vulnerable to pollution. Known as the universal solvent, water is able to dissolve more substances than any liquid on Earth. It's the only reason we have Kool-Aid and brilliant blue waterfalls. It's also why water is so easily polluted. Toxic substances from farms, towns, and factories readily dissolve into and mix with it, causing pollution. Next, what are the categories of water pollution? First, groundwater. When rain falls and seeps deep into the earth, filling the cracks and spaces of the ground, it becomes groundwater, one of our least visible but most important natural resources. Nearly 40% of Filipinos rely on groundwater pumped to the earth's surface for drinking water. For some folks in rural areas, it's their only way to have fresh water sources. Groundwater gets polluted when contaminants from pesticides and fertilizers to waste leach from landfills and septic systems make their way into an aquifer, rendering it unsafe for human use. Reading groundwater and contaminants can be difficult to impossible, as well as costly. Once polluted, an aquifer may be unusable for decades or even thousands of years. Groundwater can also spread contamination far from original polluting source as it seeps into the streams, lakes, and oceans. Next is surface water. Covering about 70% of the Earth, surface water is what fills our oceans, lakes, rivers, and all those other blue bits on the world map. Surface water from freshwater sources accounts for more than 60% of water delivered to Filipino homes. According to the most recent surveys on national water quality from the U.S., Environmental Protection Agency, nearly half of our rivers and streams and more than one-third of our lakes are polluted and unfit for swimming, fishing, and drinking. Nutrient pollution, which includes nitrates and phosphates, is the leading type of contamination in these freshwater sources. While plants and animals need these nutrients to grow, they have become a major pollutant due to farm and waste of fertilizers runoff. Next, ocean water. 80% of ocean pollution originates on land, whether along the coast or far inland. Contaminants such as chemicals, nutrients, and heavy metals are carried from farms, factories, and cities by streams and rivers into our bays and estuaries. From there, they travel out to the sea. Meanwhile, Marine debris, particularly plastics, is blown in the wind or washed in via storm drains and sewers. Our seas are also sometimes spoiled by oil spills and leaks, big and small, and are consistently soaking up carbon pollution from the air. The ocean absorbs as much as a quarter of man-made carbon emissions. Next is point source. When contamination originates from a single source, it's called point source pollution. Example includes waterways discharged legally or illegally by a manufacturer, oil refinery, or wastewater treatment facility, as well as contamination from leaking septic systems, chemicals and oil spills, and illegal dumping. The EPA regulates point source pollution by establishing limits on what can be discharged by a facility directly into the body of water. While point source pollution originates from a specific place, it can affect miles of waterways and ocean. Next is non-point source. Non-point source pollution is contamination derived from diffuse sources. This may include agricultural or stormwater runoff or debris blown into our waterways from land. Non-point source pollution is the leading cause of water pollution in the Philippine waters, but it is difficult to regulate since there is no single identifiable culprit. And lastly, the transboundary. It goes without saying that water pollution can't be contained by inline on a map. Transboundary pollution is the result of contaminated water from one country spilling into waterways of another. Contamination can result from a disaster like an oil spill or the slowed down river creep of industrial and agricultural or municipal discharge. What are the most common types of water contamination? First is agricultural. Not only in agricultural sector, the biggest consumer of global freshwater resources, with farming and livestock production using about 70% of Earth's surface water supplies, but it's also the serious water polluter. In the Philippines, agricultural pollution is the top source of contamination in rivers and streams. The second biggest source in the wetlands, and the third main source is the lakes. It's also a major contributor of contamination is to estuaries and groundwater. Next is sewage and wastewater. Used water is a wastewater. It comes from our sinks, showers, and toilets, and from commercial, industrial, and agricultural activities. The term also includes stormwater runoff, which occurs when rainfall carries road salts, oil, grease, chemicals, and debris from a permeable surface into our waterways. More than 80% of the world's wastewater flows back into environment without being treated or reused, according to the United Nations. In some least developed countries, the figure topped 95%. In the United States, wastewater treatment facilities process about 34 billion gallons of wastewater per day. These facilities reduce the amount of pollutants such as pathogens, phosphorus, and nitrogen in sewage, as well as the heavy metals and toxic chemicals in the industrial waste, before discharging the treated backwaters back into waterways. Next is oil pollution. Big spills may dominate headlines, but consumers account for the vast majority of oil pollution is our seas, including oil and gasoline that drips from millions of cars and trucks every day. Moreover, nearly half of the estimated 1 million tons of oil that makes its way into marine environments each year not from tanker spills but from land-based sources as much as factories, farms, and cities. At sea, tanker spills account for about 10% of the oil in water around the world, while regular operations of the legal shipping industry to both legal and illegal discharges contribute about one-third. Oil is also naturally released from under the ocean floor through fractures known as seeps. Next is radioactive substances. Radioactive waste is only pollution that emits radiation beyond what is naturally released by the environment. It is generated by uranium mining, nuclear power plants, and the production of testing of military weapons, as well as universities and hospitals that use radioactive materials for research and medicine. Radioactive waste can persist in the environment for thousands of years, making disposal of major changes. What are the effects of water pollution? On human health, to put it bluntly, water pollution kills. In fact, it caused 1.8 million deaths in 2015. According to the study published in Lancet, contaminated water can also make you ill. Every year, unsafe water sickens about a billion of people, and low-income communities are disproportionately at risk because their homes are often closest to the most populating and polluting industries. And how about in our environment? In order to thrive, healthy ecosystems rely on complex webs of animals, plants, bacteria, and fungi, all of which interact directly or indirectly with each other. Harm to any of these organisms can create a chain effect, imperiling entire aquatic environments. When water pollution causes algal blooms in the lake of marine environment, the proliferation of newly introduced nutrients stimulates plant and algae growth, which in turn reduces oxygen levels in the water. This dearth of oxygen, known as eutrophication, suffocates plants and animals and creates dead zones where waters are essentially devoid of life. I think that's all for today. My name is Maria Sweetlucky. See you in my next video. Bye!